First contact's price. The quantum arrays at Luna Base hummed with an unusual frequency that made Dr. Elena Santos pause her routine maintenance check. After 15 years monitoring deep space communications, she knew every normal variation in the equipment's sound. This was different. She pulled up the signal analysis on her holoscreen, coffee forgotten in her hand. The pattern was unlike anything in their database, a deliberate, repeating sequence that couldn't be natural. But it was the embedded data that made her heart race. Coordinates, technical specifications, and most importantly, a signature that matched records from humanity's most important historical event. Director Chen, she called over the comm, trying to keep her voice steady. I think you need to see this. Now. 3 hours later, the highest-ranking members of the Earth Defense Council gathered in the secure chamber beneath Geneva. The holographic projection at the center of the room showed a desperate message from a race humanity hadn't seen in 2 centuries, the Valerians. Admiral Sarah Chen, great-granddaughter of the scientist who had first decoded the Valerians' warning about the asteroid that would have ended human civilization, stood before the assembled leaders. 200 years ago, they gave us the technology to detect and deflect the Meridian impact event. Without their intervention, Earth would be a crater field today. Now, they need our help. The message played again. The Valerians, despite their advanced technology, were under attack from a species known as the Kurlat. Their main colony world, home to millions, faced imminent invasion. Their faster-than-light capabilities had been crippled by strategic strikes, leaving their population vulnerable. They're not asking for charity. Admiral Chen continued, her voice firm. They're calling in a debt that's been part of our civilization's memory for 2 centuries. Every child learns about the Valerian warning in school. Every major museum has exhibits about how their intervention sparked our golden age of space development. General Marcus Rivera, commander of Earth's combined fleet, studied the tactical displays with a grim expression. The Kurlat had them surrounded. Even with our numbers, this would be the largest military operation humanity has ever attempted. We'd be fighting an unknown enemy with superior technology. But not superior industry, Dr. Santos interjected, bringing up new diagrams. The Valerians have always focused on elegant advanced solutions. We took a different path after the impact event. We built big. We built redundant. We built to survive anything. Our ships might be less advanced, but we can field thousands to their dozens. The council chamber erupted in debate. Some argued that a 200-year-old debt didn't obligate them to risk human lives. Others insisted that humanity's honor and the very principles that had helped them survive the impact event demanded action. Finally, Council President Amara Okafor raised her hand for silence. 2 centuries ago, we were a primitive species on the brink of extinction. The Valerians didn't have to warn us. They didn't have to share their knowledge. But they did, and that act of compassion shaped who we became. She stood, her decision made. We are who we are today because another species chose to help us. Now they have a chance to prove that humanity remembers its debts, that we're worthy of the trust they placed in us centuries ago. Turning to Admiral Chen, she gave the order that would change human history forever. Initiate Operation Remembrance. All available ships, all available personnel. We're going to save the people who once saved us. As the council dispersed to begin preparations, Dr. Santos received another transmission from the Valerians. The message was brief but spoke volumes about how humanity had changed since their last contact. We remembered your potential. We never forgot the spark we saw in your species. Now the galaxy will witness what humanity has become. The greatest military operation in human history was about to begin, driven not by conquest or resources, but by a debt of honor 2 centuries in the making. The galaxy was about to learn why humanity never forgot its debts and why they never left them unpaid. The weight of memory. The London Archives, humanity's greatest repository of historical data, hadn't been opened to its lowest levels in decades. Dr. Elena Santos walked alongside Admiral Chen through the climate-controlled corridors, their footsteps echoing off walls lined with quantum storage crystals. They were searching for something specific, the original Valerian warning that had saved Earth. Most people think it was just a simple message, Elena explained, her hand brushing against the security scanner. But our ancestors stored everything. Every transmission. Every piece of data they shared, including things we still haven't fully understood. The vault door slid open with a hiss, revealing a chamber bathed in soft blue light. At its center stood a crystalline structure, the original Valerian communication device, preserved exactly as it had been received 2 centuries ago. "It's still active," Admiral Chen whispered, watching the faint pulses of light within the crystal. "After all this time." Elena nodded, connecting her diagnostic tablet. "The Valerians didn't just warn us about the asteroid. They gave us a gift, a fragment of their knowledge base. Our scientists spent decades decoding it. It jump-started our quantum computing, our gravity manipulation technology, our understanding of faster-than-light theory." The holographic displays came to life, showing the original transmissions. The Valerians appeared as they had then, tall, ethereal beings with iridescent skin that seemed to shift colors with their emotions. Their message played out in the ancient recording. "We see in your species something rare, the potential for greatness tempered by compassion. The approaching stellar body would end this potential before it can flower. We choose to intervene, not because we must, but because to allow such potential to be extinguished would diminish the galaxy itself." Admiral Chen watched the recording with new understanding. They didn't just save us. They invested in us. They saw something worth preserving. And that investment paid off. Elena continued, bringing up modern stellar maps. "In 2 centuries, we've colonized 27 worlds. Our ships might not be as elegant as theirs, but we have thousands of them. We took their gift and built something they never expected, an industrial powerhouse capable of producing on a scale they never imagined." In orbit above Earth, that industrial might was becoming apparent. Shipyards that normally produced colony vessels and cargo haulers were being rapidly converted for military production. The Earth Defense Fleet's normal complement of 500 warships would triple within months. General Rivera stood in the orbital command center, watching the massive mobilization unfold. "We're about to find out if quantity has a quality all its own," he mused, studying reports from the forward scouts. "The Kurlat have better weapons, better shields, but they've never faced anything like humanity's production capacity." The reports painted a grim picture. The Kurlat were methodical conquerors, systematically isolating and destroying any civilization they encountered. Their technology was centuries ahead of humanity's in many areas, but they had one critical weakness: they had never needed to build on a massive scale. "They're used to fighting small, advanced forces," Rivera explained to his staff. "Their typical opponents field a few dozen ships at most. We're going to show them what it means to face thousands." Back in the archives, Elena made a discovery that changed their entire understanding of the situation. Hidden in the original Valerian data crystal was a secured partition that had just become accessible, triggered by their response to the distress call. "They left us a message," she breathed, decoding the data. 200 years ago, they knew this day might come. "Listen." The ancient hologram flickered to life one more time. "If you are seeing this message, then our faith in humanity was well placed. You have chosen to answer our call for aid, despite the centuries between our interactions. Know this: the gift we gave your species was not just knowledge. It was a test to see if you would remember, if you would honor a debt across generations. You have proven yourselves worthy of what comes next." The crystal's core began to pulse with new energy, revealing technical specifications that made Elena's eyes widen. "Admiral," she called, her voice urgent. "They didn't give us all their knowledge back then. They left something in reserve, something they thought we'd need today." As humanity prepared for war, the true weight of memory became clear. They weren't just repaying a debt. They were fulfilling a destiny 2 centuries in the making. The Valerians hadn't just saved humanity. They had been preparing them for this moment all along. The next phase would test whether that preparation had been enough, as humanity prepared to face an enemy that had never known defeat. But first, they had to unlock the final gift their ancient benefactors had left them, a weapon that would change the course of the coming war. Operation Remembrance. The orbital shipyards above Mars blazed with continuous activity, endless streams of construction drones swarming around massive hull frameworks. What had once been cargo haulers and colony ships were being transformed into weapons of war. Humanity's greatest industrial mobilization in history was underway. Admiral Chen stood at the command deck of the newly commissioned dreadnought Remembrance, watching as more ships joined the growing fleet. The vessel represented everything humanity had learned in 2 centuries, not elegant like Valerian ships, but overwhelming in its presence. 3 kilometers of armor, weapons, and engines, built not to outmaneuver the enemy but to outlast them. Final count is in, General Rivera reported, his hologram flickering beside her. 3,000 ships ready for combat operations. Another 1,000 in final conversion. The Kirlat won't know what hit them. But it was Dr. Elena Santos' breakthrough that had transformed their strategy. The hidden Valerian technology wasn't a weapon. It was something far more valuable. It's a quantum entanglement matrix, she explained to the assembled fleet commanders. The Valerians didn't just give us a communication device. They gave us the key to their entire tactical network. The implications were staggering. Once activated, human ships could tap into the ancient Valerian defense grid, a network of sensors and communication relays that spanned the galaxy. The Kirlat wouldn't be fighting a primitive species with superior numbers. They'd be fighting an industrial powerhouse with access to advanced targeting data and real-time strategic information. The first test of the integrated system came during a skirmish at the edge of Valerian space. A Kirlat patrol encountered what they thought was an isolated human scout group. Instead, they found themselves facing ships that seemed to anticipate their every move, guided by targeting data from sensors they couldn't detect. They never saw it coming, reported Captain Sarah Martinez, commander of the scout group. Their technology is advanced, but they rely on it too much. They don't expect enemies to adapt, to improvise. They certainly didn't expect us to have access to Valerian targeting systems. The real test would come at the Valerian colony world of New Eden. The Kirlat had committed a third of their fleet to its conquest, confident in their technological superiority. They were about to learn that humanity had spent 2 centuries preparing for exactly this kind of fight. We're not just fighting for the Valerians, Admiral Chen addressed the assembled fleet. We're fighting to prove that humanity remembers its debts, that when we say we'll stand with our allies, we mean it, even if those allies helped us centuries ago. The human fleet dropped out of FTL in perfect formation, guided by the Valerian network. 3,000 ships, ranging from converted cargo haulers to purpose-built warships, filled the space around New Eden. The Kirlat fleet, numbering only a few hundred vessels, faced something they had never encountered, an enemy that could match their technical advantage with overwhelming numerical superiority. All ships, battle stations, Admiral Chen's order echoed across the fleet. Remember why we're here. Remember what we owe. Today, we repay a debt 2 centuries in the making. The Kirlat commander's transmission was almost amusing in its confusion. You're a primitive species. You shouldn't have this level of coordination. This technology is beyond you. Admiral Chen's response was simple. We had good teachers. And unlike you, we learned from them instead of trying to conquer them. The battle that followed would be studied for centuries to come. Human ships, guided by Valerian sensors, struck with devastating precision. Where the Kirlat expected to find easy targets, they encountered vessels that could predict and counter their advanced weapons. Where they tried to use their superior mobility, they found themselves herded into killing zones by the sheer number of human ships. But it was the converted cargo ships that proved most decisive. Stripped of their holds and packed with point defense weapons, they formed impenetrable walls of defensive fire. The Kurlat's energy weapons, designed to overcome advanced shields, proved less effective against simple mass and armor deployed in overwhelming quantities. As the battle reached its climax, the Valerian quantum network pulsed with new energy. Their ancient defense platforms, dormant for centuries, began to power up. The Kurlat found themselves caught between an armada of human warships and reactivated Valerian weapon systems they never knew existed. The message was clear. Humanity hadn't just inherited the Valerians' knowledge. They had earned the right to use every advantage their ancient benefactors had left them. The galaxy was about to learn why you should never underestimate a species that remembers its debts. The battle above New Eden. Space itself seemed to burn as the battle entered its sixth hour. The debris field around New Eden grew larger with each passing minute, a graveyard of both human and Kurlat vessels. But where the Kurlat losses were irreplaceable, the human fleet kept coming, wave after wave of ships emerging from FTL jump points. Admiral Chen watched from the Remembrance's command deck as another squadron of converted mining vessels charged a Kurlat dreadnought. The massive alien vessel's energy weapons carved through 3 of the human ships, but they had served their purpose, keeping the dreadnought's attention fixed while faster attack craft slipped through its defensive screen. Their formations are breaking, General Rivera reported, his tactical display highlighting gaps in the Kurlat defense grid. They've never had to fight a prolonged battle before. They don't know how to manage resources, how to rotate forces. They're used to quick victories. But victory had come at a cost. A third of the human fleet was either destroyed or severely damaged. The Remembrance itself bore the scars of multiple direct hits, its thick armor barely holding together in some sections. Yet for every human ship lost, the survivors learned, adapted, and shared tactical data through the Valerian network. Dr. Elena Santos, monitoring the quantum network from her station, noticed something unprecedented. The network is evolving, she reported, watching as new patterns emerged in the data flow. It's not just sharing targeting data anymore. It's learning from our tactics, integrating them with Valerian defense protocols. We're teaching it as much as it's teaching us. The Kurlat commander, his hologram flickering with damage, made one final attempt at diplomacy. "You've proven your point," he transmitted. "Your industrial capacity is impressive, but you're expending resources you can't afford to lose. Withdraw now, and we'll consider this an honorable draw." Admiral Chen's response came in the form of action rather than words. A new wave of human ships dropped out of FTL. Not warships this time, but massive construction vessels. The Kurlat watched in disbelief as humanity began rebuilding its fleet in the middle of the battlefield, repairing damaged ships and salvaging materials from destroyed ones. "You still don't understand what you're facing," Chen finally replied. "We're not fighting this battle with just the ships we brought. We're fighting it with every industrial facility in human space. Our entire civilization is committed to this effort. How long can you sustain this fight when we can replace our losses and you cannot?" The tide turned decisively when the reactivated Valerian defense platforms revealed their full capability. What the Kurlat had dismissed as ancient, inactive relics suddenly powered up to full capacity, their quantum-linked weapons synchronizing with the human fleet's attacks. Caught between the hammer of human industry and the anvil of Valerian technology, the Kurlat fleet found itself in an impossible position. To all Kurlat vessels, the enemy commander broadcast, his tone now carrying a note of genuine fear. "Emergency withdrawal. Full retreat. We cannot match this level of commitment." As the remaining Kurlat ships fled the battlefield, Dr. Santos made another discovery in the quantum network. The Valerians had left more than just weapons and sensors. They had left a message, waiting to be unlocked by this very moment. "To our human allies, if you are receiving this, you have done more than repay an ancient debt. You have proven that our faith in your species was well placed. The galaxy believed that advanced technology alone determined a civilization's worth. You have proven that determination, honor, and the willingness to stand by one's allies matter more. The network is now yours, not as a gift, but as something you have earned through sacrifice and loyalty. Admiral Chen ordered an immediate pursuit of the retreating Kurlat forces, but with a crucial difference from traditional military doctrine. The human fleet didn't chase to destroy. They pursued to protect, positioning themselves between the Kurlat and any other populated worlds in their retreat path. Send word to Earth, she commanded. The immediate threat is contained, but our work isn't finished. As long as the Kurlat threaten peaceful species, humanity has a debt to repay. Not just to the Valerians now, but to every civilization that needs protection. The Battle of New Eden would be remembered not just as a military victory, but as the moment humanity proved itself worthy of the trust placed in them centuries ago. The galaxy was changing, and humanity's dedication to repaying its debts had earned them a place among the stars that no one could have predicted. Legacy of Two Worlds. 1 year after the Battle of New Eden, the galaxy had changed in ways few could have predicted. The Great Hall of the newly established Galactic Concordat buzzed with activity as representatives from dozens of species gathered for a historic occasion. At the center of it all stood humans and Valerians, once separated by centuries of silence, now united in common cause. Admiral Chen, her uniform bearing both human and Valerian honors, stood before the assembled representatives. The scars on the Remembrance, now permanently docked above the hall as a museum ship, were visible through the transparent dome overhead. Each mark told a story of humanity's determination to repay its debt. A year ago, we answered a call that was 2 centuries old, she began. We did so not because it was easy, but because it was right. What we discovered was more than just an ancient ally in need. We found our place in the galaxy. The changes were profound. The Kurlat Empire, faced with the combined might of human industry and Valerian technology, had been forced to transform. Their representatives sat in the hall not as conquerors, but as members of a new galactic community. They had learned, painfully, that technological superiority meant little against the combined strength of allies who stood together. Dr. Elena Santos, now heading the Joint Human-Valerian Research Initiative, presented her findings to the Assembly. The quantum network that had helped win the battle had evolved into something unprecedented. A galactic communication and defense system that linked participating worlds together. But it wasn't just about technology anymore. What we created goes beyond weapons and shields, she explained. We've built a framework for cooperation. Human industrial capacity combined with Valerian precision. Kurlat energy systems adapted for peaceful power generation, each species contributing its strengths, learning from others instead of trying to dominate them. The statistics told their own story. Trade between civilizations had increased tenfold. Cultural exchange programs flourished. Former enemies found common ground in joint projects that benefited all. But most importantly, the galaxy had learned a crucial lesson about judging the worth of a civilization. General Rivera, speaking to a group of young officers from various species, put it simply. The Kurlat thought they could judge a species' value by their technology level. The Valerians knew better. They saw potential in a primitive species that had barely reached their moon. Today, we continue their legacy by looking beyond surface differences to see the true worth of each civilization we encounter. The Valerian ambassador, their iridescent skin glowing with pride, presented humanity with one final gift: the complete historical records of their first contact with Earth. We saw in you what others missed, they announced. Not just the capacity for advancement, but the heart to use that advancement wisely. You've proven that faith was well placed. But it was a small moment after the ceremony that truly captured the change. A young Kurlat scientist approached Dr. Santos with a proposal for a joint research project. We spent centuries believing we had to prove our superiority, they admitted. You showed us there's strength in cooperation, in remembering and honoring our connections to others. Admiral Chen ended the day by visiting the Remembrance's museum deck. The ship's battle scars had been preserved, but among them now hung artwork from a dozen species, each depicting their own interpretation of the battle that had changed everything. A group of school children, human, Valerian, and even Kirlat, listened as their teacher explained the significance of what had happened here. The debt was repaid, the teacher told them, but what we built in repaying it was worth far more. We built a future where species lift each other up instead of tearing each other down. As she looked out at the stars through the Great Hall's dome, Admiral Chen reflected on how far they'd come. Humanity had entered the galactic stage, not through conquest or technological superiority, but through an unwavering commitment to repay a debt of honor. In doing so, they had helped create something unprecedented. A galaxy where strength was measured not in weapons or technology, but in the bonds forged between civilizations. The ancient Valerian message, now displayed prominently in the hall, seemed to glow with new meaning. The greatest power in the universe is not the ability to destroy, but the willingness to preserve, protect, and remember. Humanity proved this truth, and in doing so, changed the stars themselves. The legacy of two worlds, Earth and New Eden, had become the foundation for a new galactic age. An age built not on dominance, but on cooperation, not on fear, but on trust, not on forgetting, but on remembering. And at its heart stood the simple truth that had started it all. Some debts, when repaid, create something far greater than was owed.